I'm Mychal. I'm a sommelier, tarot card reader, and former ballerina.
I'm Suzanne. I am a writer, an author, and a podcaster.
And this is All the Woo.
Seasonette 1, Astrology, Medical Astrology,
Medical
Episode 4.
Episode 4. As always, we always just like to remind you that this is a safe space, a non-judgmental zone where we are sharing our own stories and experiences with these topics. And this is very much true with this. And just we are not medical professionals, since
We are not giving medical advice
in any way, shape, or form. And even a medical astrologer will tell you if you're having an issue, you should see a medical professional.
We are not any of those things. We're just talking about our own stuff.
Yes, we are. All right.
What are we drinking?
Very important question. We are drinking the Montes Toscanini Criado en Roble. I think you pronounced the E on that. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that slightly.
Spanish,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is a Tannat, which I'm going to do my dad joke. Tannat or not Tannat? Oh, so bad. Okay, 2020. It's from Uruguay, from the Las Piedras, Canelones area. So the reason why I picked this wine is because I think a lot of people have heard that wine can be healthy for you.
Yes, it can.
Yes, Suzanne is definite on this.
I am on this point. Yeah.
There's a lot of disclaimers on this, though. If you talk to especially medical professionals, I have been told that typically red wine is healthier for you than white wine first. Also that it's more helpful to you when you're 40 or older.
See, there's a benefit to being older.
Yes, right? And always, of course, in moderation as being very important. That being said, the thing that makes it beneficial for people is the polyphenols, which are antioxidants that are in the wine that is very helpful to the cardiovascular system. And this wine, Tannat, is very high in polyphenols. I'm going on a limb, and I'm going to think it's arguably the highest level polyphenols as far as being offered in wine. And that is true for Tannat in general, which is the grape. So it's very high. It's bigger bodied, bolder, red wine. Yeah, it is. So if you want to be healthy
and drink wine,
and
this
drink
is it.
wine.
Uruguayan.
Yes, it is the way to go.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So we're being very healthy tonight, Suzanne.
Yes, we are, and talking about health. Mm-hmm. So your astrology chart, what are the things that it can show you about health? Oh my goodness, golly gracious,
maybe
so much.
More than you wanted to know. Yeah.
But I think one of the really key points is that, and the first time I ever had the experience of somebody connecting my astrology chart with my health is I was specifically doing an astrological reading. I had not done any astrology. This was before I got started in all of this. And I was trying to find out why I was so insanely sick and when it was ever going to end, because I had been I was under the care of a medical professional, but we were going through just a really, really lengthy detox. And as I was on Zoom, hello pandemic, with this woman, and she was asking me different questions, and she was like, I hadn't said, this was a little bit cagey on my part, but is also sort of how I can be mysterious, is that I was just talking to her. I did not come out and say, hey, tell me what's wrong with me. It was like, I don't even understand most of the words she's using right now. So I'm just going to hang on to the things I can and ask questions when she opens for them. And she was like, so have you been having health problems? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And she was like, I see it right here. Something happens. Isn't that interesting? Today. And then you will never have to, there'll be consequences, but this is the end of it being in your house.
Yes.
And at the time, I had no idea what that was about. And it took me years probably to understand kind of what she was talking about. But looking back on my astrology, it was something malefic moving out of my house of health.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, it was on that day that transit was taking place.
Suzanne was freed. She was freed.
It took a while to piece unravel everything that had been fried.
Yeah.
But it was such a clear example to me of what was possible to see in
Mhm.
terms of timing. So I think you can endure a lot if you know it's going to end. And one of the things that's scary about being sick when you don't have a very definite diagnosis, or, you have migraines, that kind of
Yep.
thing, of just like, is this ever going to end?
Mhm.
And to have that anchor. And I think it was like another full year, 18 months or something before I stopped living with symptoms.
Yeah.
But to know, okay, it's coming to an end.
Right.
This is just,
This is not the rest of my life, which is
yes,
nice to know.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, so much so.
Yeah.
And as a, kid who had migraines for years, that
Mhm.
was exactly it. It's just, let me know when it's going to end.
Yeah. Yeah. For anybody who experiences migraines, you know exactly what this is like. Just like,
And for people who don't experience migraines, but occasionally have headaches and are just like, oh my gosh, my head hurts so bad,
mhm.
and aren't prepared, probably, or less prepared than you or I, when it's like, oh, this is coming on. I can feel it, to
Yeah.
just be blindsided.
Mhm. No, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so I know you have had multiple experiences.
With health and astrology
Health and
or
astrology.
migraines? Because migraines, yes,
I was
I've
about to say, we are
had.
not an M, we are an A.
Well, so a lot of my things, which I found this out in my chart, which was like the light bulb that went off when somebody told me this about my chart. Apparently, I have a quality which is not, I don't know how normal is. I don't know. I don't know why I'm saying it that way. It is important to note that there's a marker in my chart that says that it is a good idea for me to typically get a second or third opinion, and that if I get a diagnosis and that doesn't feel right to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably accurate.
Mm-hmm.
My questioning the diagnosis, because I am somebody who traditionally gets misdiagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
and that has been very true for me in my life up into, like, not into that point, but even when I came to this realization
Mm-hmm.
of that being shared, I was like, yeah, that is true. And it's made me very skeptical of doctors and diagnoses that I get, because more often than not, they're writing it off as being something and not looking deeper into the problem. And
Mm-hmm.
so 3 antibiotics later,
Mm.
3 different courses of antibiotics later, they're actually finding out what's really wrong, because I've gone through and I was like, okay, well, as you said, so I'll take this again. All right. Or we're now taking a really strong one that's meant to fight the plague. Cool. Like, it's not something that you want to do a trial and error on your body for if
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary, right? Because it can do a lot of damage in the process. So, which is why it's so important to work with professionals, because they are supposed to know what the risks are for medications that they're providing. And I also found through this what can be triggers for me in health problems. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually ended up getting a health analysis for a chart done.
Mm-hmm.
And so going through it, I found, first of all, it directly calls out all the things that I suffer from on a regular basis. Migraines is definitely mentioned in
Mm-hmm.
this as being one of the things. And the reason why I'm harping on the migraine thing is because I've had such a hard time, and I think this is true probably for a lot of people who suffer from migraines. It's hard to always know what has triggered the migraine in
Mm-hmm.
order to take care of it, because even when I've taken migraine medication, it doesn't always get rid of the migraine. Or even other medications that are supposed to, like Excedrin, may sometimes work, but not all the time work. Advil sometimes work, doesn't all the time work. Prescription medication sometimes work, sometimes makes it worse. Like, so in my migraines, I suffer that go for days. I've had it last for weeks. I've even had it last for months before. So, there comes a point where you're like, honestly, if we could find something that
Mm-hmm.
works, that would be great. And I have found a lot of guidance through my astrology chart, the medical interpretation
Mm-hmm.
of it, to find out where I should be looking as being root causes, which has been very helpful.
And so, one of the ways that your astrology, even if you're not looking at your chart, you can kind of understand is if you start with Aries being your head and move down into Taurus being your throat and upper arms, and just proceed down to your feet being Pisces, you can kind of, without even looking at your chart, just knowing what your sign is,
Focus areas. Yeah.
yeah, kind of understand this might be an issue. And I find this particularly interesting, like looking at my parents and seeing sort of over the years how behaviors and choices that fit in with those particular zodiac signs kind of create these physical expressions.
Hmm.
And so, you don't have to know astrology or even believe in it, but you can see it being enacted with tendencies. And I think that's really what the chart is trying to reveal to you when you read it. And so, depending on what your sign is, will possibly lead you in that direction. And I think it's not just because we are so aware in alternative medicine and in woo
Hmm.
how connected the physical is with the mental, emotional, spiritual. And so a physical issue is not necessarily just a physical issue. And so I think the chart helps with that. And even just knowing your sign. So if you know that you tend to be, because you're Aries, you tend to be hot headed and driven and initiator,
Hmm.
and all of those kinds of things that come with any cardinal sign, but especially with fire cardinal,
Hmm.
that an understanding that, yeah, you're probably going to have more head injuries, more head aches, more head heat.
Yes.
And I think one of the most helpful things I read was a book by a Chinese doctor. And the whole summary of the book is that the path to health is a cool head and a warm body. And oftentimes, people who have hot heads have cold bodies. So they're suffering from stagnancy from the neck down,
Yeah.
and then they're overheating their brains.
Yeah.
And I haven't been the poster child of that ever,
Ever.
ever.
Not at all. Well, that being said, that definitely describes, so in broad strokes for my
Mhm.
chart. So if you look at my chart, it would say that I'm air dominant and that I'm cardinal dominant.
Which the astrology translator here, which means mental, not mental like woo, but
I mean, although maybe, I don't know.
mental as in very focused mentally, and cardinal meaning the initiator.
Yeah, very driven style person. So I'm all about getting things done. So I'm living in my head a lot of the time. I am on the go all the time. I'm very action oriented in everything that I do. And so some of the things which the chart says, but me even just telling you that information, you can probably guess that I might be somebody who lives in my head all the time. And I'm working on doing things all the time that I may forget to eat. That happens a lot.
That happened for probably 15 years in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, your body's just like, this is no longer acceptable. So
Yes.
I'm glad you're starting to feed yourself before you hit that particular brick wall.
Yeah. Suzanne yells at me all the time when she's like,
It's a
have you
very
eaten
gentle
yet?
yelling, but it's only because I've been in your spot.
Yes. And so that's one thing. So all those things that it also can create, it can create headaches, it can create arthritis, it can create stomach problems. Like just putting those things together are some of the physical manifestations that can come from those behaviors
Mhm.
over time.
So the other thing that the chart can help you do is give you the remedy for these things.
Yes, it can.
Because oftentimes, whatever you have an excess of, you need the antidote for. And the antidote is on the other side of the chart. So for your Libra,
Mm-hmm.
and you need a little bit more, and this is part of Chinese medicine as well, is you are always using what will dry up wet, what will warm cold. So that kind of configuration. And so Aries fire to be a little bit more independent of what people might think,
Mm-hmm.
and to stand a little bit apart from the crowd if necessary, to have your relationship with yourself be the most dominant.
Yeah, that's one of the things where it's like I need to identify my worth as not being dependent on the opinions of others, which so much easier said than done.
Legit.
Yeah.
Absolutely legit.
But also know that all these things, in case you haven't noticed, that there's been a common thread through all these things: stress, stress, stress. So stress can weigh on your nervous system, which can mean that I can suffer from nervous system disorders. And
Yes.
so there are vitamins that you can take that help strengthen your nervous system, like B complex vitamins as being a major. So that's actually something in my chart that shows up again and again and again. Like, I'm not telling you everything that's in my chart, but there's a definite theme that goes through my chart, which very often it does mention B vitamins, getting sunshine, relaxing, my favorite B vitamin, breath, to breathe. It's definitely mentioned there, right? It's all these things to counterbalance my stressors and to ground myself and to take time out for myself, right?
And I would say, as somebody who's blown out her adrenals and most everything else, finding, somatic exercises, Feldenkrais, that kind of thing, stuff that helps rebalance my central nervous system seems to be such a divine key, because, gentle listener, I'm sure you're going to find this surprising, but Mychal and I have a lot in common when it comes to this.
Yeah, it makes us good for getting things done. That's how this podcast came about.
But less good at eating. So
eating, pay attention to what our body needs. Suzanne has made fun of me so many times. Like, how many injuries are you going to take before you actually
go to a doctor?
To a doctor. Like, you have glass in your eye, your
fingers hanging off. I mean, that didn't actually happen.
The glass in the eye thing did happen.
The glass in the eye did happen. It was not on my watch as a friend. It would not have gone as long. But I think we do mirror for each other.
Yes.
Kind of like, okay, you know what? I have done that stupid thing. Please do not do that stupid thing. Which is where I think it really comes from, is just like, learn from my mistakes.
Please. Yes.
So other things that the chart can be helpful with when it comes to, or your astrology can be helpful, is understanding how to eat, speaking of food. And I think one of the reasons why Mychal and I both have had, putting that in a past tense, difficulty feeding ourselves is because it can be a minefield of knowing kind of
what's good for me
this week.
Yes.
And so I have found eating according to, this is going to sound just, this is what I have found that works. Eating according to the moon cycle. And so on the days that it's Earth, making vegetables and, protein pasta, the focus, and fish days and chicken days and whatever, and doing it that way so that I am lined up as much as possible with the energy that I feel like affects me the most.
Yeah. I'm also fairly cyclical in how I am eating. There's certain times within that cycle that I am bumping up my B vitamins. I'm bumping up my magnesium. Let's see what else. Some like my vitamin D and things like that, because my body needs more of that during certain times, literally within a month's time.
Yeah.
Also, I have found that it states for me in my chart, because your chart can be very beneficial in telling you how to enjoy food as being, yes. And so for me, there's not like a set regimented way of me to enjoy it, except for that if I think about it and I really kind of sit with it and feel it, that I will crave what it is exactly that I need, and whatever it is that I'm craving, I should be eating. And then if I'm not craving it, or if I'm not in the mood for it, then I should not be eating it. So it's a very intuitive way of eating, but that's not to say that that's true for everybody else, that everybody else should be eating that way.
Sure. And I think for me, I have learned, again, through my chart, that my astrology chart, is that the way I eat is the most helpful. So being relaxed, so that whole central nervous system to be in parasympathetic, to be able to rest and digest, being a huge component of my entire structure, mental, physical, spiritual everything. So being able to be calm, but also feeling good about the food I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost, like how I feel about it turns it into either poison or medicine. If I feel guilty about it, then it's going to rest in my body as guilt. If I feel good about it, then it's going to nourish me.
Yeah, I think mine is very similar in a lot of ways to that. So the other thing for my chart is that it's very important for me to take my time to eat,
Mm.
to slowly savor it, that I should not be forcing myself to eat quickly, which I have to say for years and years of working within restaurants and being able, like, you have this food, you have to eat it in less than a minute, standing over on the side. Like, that is not the most ideal way for me to eat in my body to take all the nutrition that it needs to get.
To be fair, I can't think of anybody
True.
who that would be a good way to be.
Agreed. But for me, it's even more important that my body will lose nutrition. So I might just be eating food and it's not doing anything for me because I'm not taking the time to sit and savor it.
Yeah, you're basically eating while you're in flight or fright.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is great. That's probably not what my body wants at that moment in time.
Like, we don't have anything to digest this with. But yes, for me, also the eating slowly, being really present. But to be fair, so much of my chart is just being present.
Yeah.
Stop being in the past, stop being in the future, be now.
Be right now. That's really important.
Balance, Suzanne.
All in all, another way that these charts can be used, which if you are having a medical issue and perhaps you're having a hard time trying to really kind of figure it out, this can be a good thing to look towards to give maybe some direction of where to look in your body. Like for me, like I said before, I'm very regularly misdiagnosed because I'm not the most traditional disease or whatever that you want to, whatever label that you want to put on it. That's actually what is the most common is not actually what's really going on with me, which is where a lot of the medical field likes to go. What is a lot of the problem for me and what this kind of points out for me is that lymph nodes are really a big cause. So I need to put a lot of my attention on making sure that my lymph system is draining properly and really take care of that as
Make
a
sure
system.
you're taking all the trash out.
Yes, exactly. Because it'll get backed up, which is not surprising that it'll cause problems, right? But even for other people that I've known that have had medical issues and are having a hard time finding really what the cause of this is, that it can be can put you on the right path of where to be looking, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And I would say, as I was trying to figure out, I mentioned earlier that I was sick for a while and having a difficult time figuring everything out, looking at my chart through the lens of gene keys and human design, where instead of looking at a chart, you have words. And so one of the words, it has kind of the less effective state you can be, the beneficial, and then like the accomplished 3 states of any particular word. And for that signifies that placement in your chart, basically. And this is using gene keys, especially, are sort of syncing together your DNA and the I Ching. It is absolutely amazing. But anyway, looking at that and realizing that one of the things I needed to be wary of in myself, which is because I have such a strong Saturn placement, is constriction, restriction, anything with striction in it. Those are all, and I was reading that and barely able to get the words between the tightness of my brain cells to be able to understand. But that was so much a part of how I did everything.
Right.
And accomplished stuff is by restriction and constriction and all the other restrictions. But that was another way, a different interpretation, a different way of looking at the same information that was incredibly helpful. So if you are thinking, oh my gosh, my chart, I don't know, and I don't know if I had to find a medical astrologer, etc., but you can go and look at your gene keys, and it gives you very similar information just in words instead of pictures. And while it is something that you need to sit with and really, really take your time, and when I say really take your time, I mean take your time. As you are reading those words, they are medicine, and you need to give yourself time to digest them and absorb them. So, doing that can really help unlock things that you might not have perceived before.
Yeah, we have not really talked too much about gene keys or human design in the past, but we will, I'm sure, since we're talking about it now, probably talk about it in the future more in depth. But just on a really quick note, as a side thing, there's a lot of synchronicities between gene keys, human design, and astrology, where
Because it's all based on your chart.
right, they all support each other and really kind of give kind of different information, but also similar information. It's like all different kinds of interpretations of you, which can be very helpful.
So, thank you so much for joining us for Seasonette 1. We are wrapping up astrology here, and we will see you for Seasonette 2, which is going to be
Ghost stories. My scary ghost stories. You guys have only heard the fun, happy ghost stories so far.
So, we're going to celebrate October by terrifying everybody.
I hope not too bad, though. Okay.
Thanks for listening to All the Woo.
A to Z.